You've had Wendy's Nugs dipped in sauce, but have you had them covered in sauce? Wendy's new Saucy Nugs take the crispy and spicy nugs you love and turn them up to 11. Choose between flavors like buffalo, honey barbecue, garlic parm, or if you're a real heat seeker, try the spicy ghost pepper. Only on Wendy's signature nugs. I dare you. By the way, those other three flavors I mentioned, there is a hot version of all three. You should try them all. The hot ones. Mwah. 7 delicious ways to try the nugs you already love. Pick a flavor, grab some extra napkins, and prepare to nug like you have never nugged before for a whole new way to nug. It's got to be Wendy's at participating U.S. Wendy's. Welcome to Andy and Ari on 3. It's rivalry week. It's saucy. Producer River gave us a saucy take right before the show started where he goes, USC money line, and that's all I'm going to say. Come on.
Andy, you know what I went to bed thinking about last night? First of all, new show that you suggested, Landman, electric. Love that show. We were watching it. And then...
So Allie Larder's character, I like to imagine, is just the 40-something version of her character from Varsity Blues. Like the shows exist in the same universe. And she just grew up, and now she has a 20-something and a 17-year-old. She's Billy Bob Thornton's ex-wife. Like, it all tracks.
Varsity Blues out there, like near Midland.
Yeah.
Located?
It's halfway. West Canaan's halfway between Midland and Odessa.
That is so funny because that's what I was thinking too. I was like, I hope there's. I'm not going to say what I just said. Hey, Andy, I'll say it. I hope there's a washing machine in this somewhere.
I thought you were going to whipped cream bikini, but washing machine I would also accept.
Andy. So here's what so we watched the show, we shut it off, and then I went to sleep because I was like, I don't know if you do this, but every night before I go to bed, I kind of visualize like what's on my plate the next day. And I have to do the list of teams that are still technically alive for the college football playoff. And I know we have a lot of picks to do, and I know that River dropped this USC bomb on us right before we went live. But I was playing it in my head over and over and over again. Are we sure that Alabama is out? Before I do this, are we I want to take them off. I want to take them off the list, but I was thinking about it. What is the path for Alabama to get into this thing? Because if Georgia wins this SEC championship this year, and they're a 3-loss team with a win over Georgia, you and Ralph Russo were texting about this yesterday. Are we sure that SMU gets in? Or Miami gets in, the loser of the ACC, over a 3-loss team in the SEC with a win over Georgia. How far are we going with this? Help me, please help me.
Alabama does this every year.
It doesn't matter what they do.
They're doing it now. You just can't quit them. You can't quit them. But it is the win over Georgia is the thing. And here's the other thing. So what's the team we've been saying all along? Oh, it's a 3-loss team. They're the hottest one in America right now. If they'd be the one nobody would want to play. South Carolina, right? So this is how I came to the conclusion that Alabama's not quite out of it yet. South Carolina is sort of the cause for the people who say 3-loss teams should get in. Well, who has South Carolina lost to? Alabama and Ole Miss, both 3-loss SEC teams that beat Georgia. Alabama or Ole Miss would get in over South Carolina. So if you're thinking about South Carolina getting in, you got to move up to Alabama and Ole Miss getting in because they would more likely get in than South Carolina.
Yeah, and I think I'm looking at the chat here and people are like, can you stop, talking about Alabama or whatever? And it's I want to stop talking about them. But I'm doing a list where people will look at it.
Nick Terry says, can we look at their freaking results? They scored 3 points against Oklahoma. They also beat Georgia. That is also a result.
And I'm not trying to talk myself into it. I want people who are listening to know that I'm not trying to talk myself into this. I don't want this. But I was thinking about coming into the year what the 12-team format would actually mean. And I don't know if you were on the same page with me, Andy. Coming into the year, didn't you think that there would be 3-loss teams in the dance? Isn't that how you kind of visualize it?
I did. I figured there'd be 1 or 2. Either as the conference champion or as one of the final at-larges, yes.
So I don't know if Alabama needs more chaos or if Alabama just needs to be compared to a one-loss team or a two-loss team from the ACC. But like, I don't know if I can take them off the list, and I just wanted to know if you were agreeing with me on that.
No, you're right. I came to the same conclusion you did, kind of in a different way. I wasn't thinking about it before bed or in the shower, which is where you usually do your best thinking. But yes, I thought about that. How about this? Let me throw this scenario at you, because this is one I thought up yesterday, and I was like, wow. This would be, to hear the politics coming out of the conference offices if this happened would be spectacular. Like, the spin doctors would earn their money. Ready? Texas A&M beats Texas, thereby earning a spot in the SEC championship game. Texas A&M at that point would be a 9-3 team. Georgia Tech beats Georgia. Georgia's already in the SEC championship game. They would be a 9-3 team. The SEC championship is winning in, and the loser is out. And the winner would not get in any other way.
Yeah. I'm like, yeah, just like you saw what happened this past weekend. Rivalry weekend's even weirder. And listen, like, Alabama could lose to Auburn on Saturday. I'm fully convinced.
Easily. So they just got beat 24-3 by Oklahoma.
Yeah. I mean, I think that it being at home makes it harder to envision for me, but that is what it is. That game is always weird. So hopefully we won't have to talk about this, Andy, but like, when I do the list today, I'm keeping them on regretfully.
Yeah. You should keep Ole Miss on as well, because it's the same reason. It is a win against Georgia and a win against South Carolina. Those are the things that are holding them up.
Now, the only reason why I actually feel good about the ACC, and I think we've seen this from the committee in the past, is if you have two teams that have the same argument going against one team that's not a part of the argument, then usually you pick the one because you can't decipher the other two, right? Like, so like if you have Alabama and Ole Miss sitting there at 9-3 at the end of the year, and Ole Miss has a win over Georgia and Alabama has a win over Georgia, how do you decipher those two teams? And if you put Alabama in, then Ole Miss would be angry and the ACC would be angry. You might as well just pick the ACC team and make everybody in the SEC angry for the same reason. Like, because you can't split those hairs, right? Like, how do you pick between those two? If we get to a point where we are accepting that a 3-loss team is in the playoff, you cannot decipher Alabama and Ole Miss in a rational way. You can look at the 5th most important metric that they have in their little notebooks in that conference room, but they're basically the same team. So that's my thought.
So I think the other thing is, and I said this earlier in the season, if you beat multiple playoff teams, that's going to help you. But who beat multiple playoff teams if it's going to be what we think? Because like Alabama and Ole Miss beat Georgia. That's the playoff team they beat. Alabama lost to Tennessee. That's the other one that might make the playoff. Ole Miss beat Georgia. That's the playoff team. Like there's not another playoff team they beat. Everybody we're talking about, everybody has one win against a potential playoff team. The one team I think that could end up with more than one is Ohio State, because
that's
they beat
the only
Penn State
one that has it,
and they beat Indiana. They could actually end up with wins against 3 playoff teams, because they could beat Oregon in the Big Ten championship.
Yeah, or if Oregon beats Ohio State, then they get credit for 2.
They would have 2, and Ohio State would have 2.
Yeah, I think that Oregon would deserve to have credit for 2. But again, I think that splitting hairs on that one, I think that both of those teams would probably agree that the 5 seed, if that's where they end up with a loss, would be better for them. So I don't know if Oregon wants credit for 2. That would be. So yeah, so I'm going to do this today, and I'm going to leave.
Hunter asks, how many games is too many games to lose? Is starting to feel like these games don't matter. 3-loss team in the playoffs. Come on now, Hunter. Let's say I want to posit a world where there are no Group of 5 or FCS non-conference games. Like, imagine it were like the NFL and the power teams only played the power teams. You'd have tons of 3-loss teams in the playoff. Like, when the teams are more equal, they lose games. That's how this works. And you're just going to keep seeing that as long as this era continues, which it's going to.
If you don't like 3-loss teams in the playoff, then you're a 14 person. I think that's
and your time has passed because it's gone and dead and never coming back. So
I'm just saying that's where, if Alabama gets into the playoff and you're outraged by it, then don't be upset if you're a 12-team person, because your view of the sport and how it should be expanded is what led to it. So that's how it is.
Yeah, and trust me, it's going to be better because the playoff's going to be fun. Like this whole, we don't want it to be the NFL. Like, the NFL is the most popular sport in the country for a reason. The NFL playoffs are a lot of fun. I don't know how to break this to you guys. Teams lose games in the NFL because the talent is relatively equal. So we spent 20 years saying, God, I wish the talent was more equal in college football. I wish there was a way to do that. I hate that two teams just dominate the whole sport. Well, now you have that, and you're bitching because teams are losing. What did you think was going to happen? This is what you want.
I'm happy that you. I mean, I'm not going to. I
Producer
don't have
River,
any
clip
energy
that
left.
so we can have dueling. This is what you want.
That is what you want.
That is what you want. Shoot.
I just don't have the energy anymore.
Let me do it again. Ari, clear the audio. Let me do it again. Hold on. 3, 2, 1. That is what you want. There it is. Goat Dog with
you want.
Yes. Goat Dog with an interesting point in the chat. How they look right now will be the big joker in that committee room. This is interesting, Ari. So what you just said about the split the baby argument with the ACC teams in Alabama, like, Alabama just got shredded at Oklahoma. Let's say they beat Auburn but look like crap doing it. That's where you can easily make the they look better now argument to put the loser of the ACC championship game in there.
Now, the real funny thing, and I saw someone else in the chat brought this up, but I would be really interesting if 9-3 Alabama got in and it was at the expense of a 10-2 SEC team. Like, if that was, instead of adding an SEC team and screwing the ACC,
just take one out.
If they messed it up and took a SEC team out with 2 losses. Like, what if like Texas got left out in favor of Alabama because Alabama beat Georgia and Texas is a 2-loss team at the end of the year?
It's not the worst, because that's just saying Alabama played a harder schedule and respecting that. Like, it's not the weirdest thing you could do. JC with a really good idea for tomorrow's show. I like this. I think we should do this, Ari. I create some blind resume arguments for you, and you create some blind resume arguments for me. And so we try to guess what the teams are. And see, because I love the blind resume game because it does challenge your assumptions.
Yeah. Yeah, we could do that. I'm terrible at it, but we can do it.
Well, I think just come up with what you think is the best one and the most intriguing one or two, and then we can work on that, because I think
it's interesting is that the entire paradigm of the things that we were worried about in the playoff race last Tuesday night, have become like rendered useless, because like we were arguing about where SMU was ranked and how important that was maybe for them to get in. But then at the same time, it's like it felt like they were a win or you're out scenario. So the ranking didn't matter, but now their ranking kind of does matter. Like if SMU comes into the weekend and they're 13 or something again, like for whatever reason, because they don't love SMU's resume for some reason, like that would be an alarming thing. Like SMU is living right now or operating under the assumption that even if they lose a close game to Miami in the ACC or the ACC, God, these conferences, the ACC championship that they're in. But like, what if SMU was number 12 tomorrow? Like, can we assume that? Like, even though they're 10-1, 7-0 in the ACC, like SMU has been the team that has been most discriminated against in terms of resume and ranking. So, like,
because the way it's set up now, like if SMU were to lose the ACC championship game, the committee would have to still bring them up into the playoff,
right?
Which they could do. They could just say, "Well, it was they gave Miami a better game than we thought they would, and their resume shows they deserve it." Like they can come up with any reason they want, but it does seem like SMU kind of has to win this, and then Miami would settle into an at-large spot. But
when we did the mock committee, it's really difficult because you only simulate. Like they bring media members in. I don't know if you guys know this, but they bring media members in every year to Grapevine, Texas, and they allow media members to mock. They pick a random year, and then they put you in the conference room. They give you all the materials and let you go through what the committee goes through. And it's a really fun exercise because you get an opportunity to understand what they're doing and actually doing it yourself. But the thing that is difficult about it is it's only a 1 or a 2 day thing, and you only do it with all the information from once the season is completed. So you don't. The one thing that I've always wondered, and I'm sure you have too, Andy, is as the committee is doing it, they're ranking every week with the most updated information, week 2, week 3, week 4. Are they ever considering ranking teams in a way where they're making a statement for the future? And I would argue that they're not. So we spend all this time talking about, well, what does SMU being 13 right now mean for SMU? It just means that that's what the committee thought they were this week. And that can change like that next week. So there's no I think people are like, the committee is sending you a message so later on they can do this. It's like, they don't do that at all. They just do what they think is right in the moment. But a lot of times what they think is right in the moment can be alarming if you're a team that's banking on trying to get it at the end.
Yeah.
Like backdooring it. Yeah.
Exactly. So games that will affect the playoff race, you can go to them. If you don't have tickets, doesn't matter. You can go to them. Gametime is your home for last-minute tickets. You want to go to Texas and Texas A&M, you can be at Kyle Field. Now, it will cost you. We're talking $600 and $700 to get into this game. But you can get into to Sanford Stadium and watch a little clean, old-fashioned hate Georgia and Georgia Tech for $130. Or for as low as $25, you can get into Jack Trice Stadium in Ames and watch Farmageddon, which, by the way, this game may have more impact on the playoff than the other ones. Because if Iowa State beats Kansas State, they're in the Big 12 championship game. If they win the Big 12 championship game, they are in the playoff. That game was awesome last year in Manhattan. It was in the snow. It was high scoring. It was crazy. If you get a game like that, $25 well spent. So download your Gametime app, and it doesn't have to be football games. It can be comedy shows. It can be concerts. I bought Taylor Swift tickets for my wife and daughter a few weeks ago on Gametime. Use the code STAPLES, $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply, but $20 off that first purchase if you use the code STAPLES. Download the Gametime app. Doesn't matter if you have tickets now. Doesn't matter if you wake up day of the game and like, I want to go to the game. Gametime has your tickets. So easy. The process is pretty seamless. With that Taylor Swift situation, it was day of the concert, morning of. We had tickets within 5 minutes. It was amazing. So download Gametime. Use the code STAPLES. $20 off your first purchase. Ari, we must pick some games now. And River, yes, dropped a little bomb on us right as we started. Our producer goes, I'm just going to say this, USC money line in the USC Notre Dame game. So we'll get to that. We got to start with a Black Friday game, though.
It's a psychopath thing.
I know.
That's not happening.
I want to know, like, why? What do you know?
So on Friday, we had a handyman come over and install a ceiling fan in this room because I'm a big circulating.
Because you can't do it yourself. Got it. Okay.
Oh yeah, I'm gonna get up on a ladder and install a ceiling fan. Like I can't even put together a mic.
It's so easy. They've got the little hook things now where you just hook the fan assembly on it and then wire it up. It's easy.
I'm sure it's a freaking breeze with caulking up there. I'm sure I could do that. Hey, and Brett bought this fan off Amazon, and I guess the instructions were
in Chinese,
in Japanese or something, like or Chinese, and like the handyman was like, "I'm just winging this here." Like, could you imagine if I like?
Yes,
you know
I have.
What I love
can
about
imagine
myself
because I've done it. Yes, I can imagine.
Is that I'm not arrogant enough to even attempt it. Like I just know who I am. But anyway, I turned it on because it's kind of warm in here. Can you hear it?
No.
Okay, perfect. Let's ride.
That's a long wind up for an EFIS pitch there, RV. All right. Black Friday game in Athens, Georgia. Georgia Tech at Georgia. Georgia is a 19.5-point favorite in this game. And oh my God, Ari, that feels like so many points.
Yeah. Does it? I mean, I know Georgia Tech has played pretty well at times this year, but Like this is like Georgia going into Death Star mode, back into the SEC championship game, ready to be the number 2 seed in the playoff. I mean, I think people are like, well, if Georgia Tech beats Georgia, and every time I hear that, my eyes roll into the back of my head. Like, come on, what are we doing?
But I'm not saying do they beat Georgia. I'm saying do they lose by 15 to Georgia? This is a very different question.
No, I know, but like even the notion or the thought that Georgia Tech can keep it close in my brain makes it fog. So I don't know. I don't know what I think. Like, do you think like Georgia is going to play another lackadaisical game, or do you think that it's Georgia Tech is good enough to play close with Georgia? Both of those are alarming. But
Ari, which game is more important, this game or the SEC championship game?
The SEC championship game. And UMass just ran up 250 yards of offense against Georgia in the first half on Saturday. I don't know if you saw that.
Yo, I did. So
yeah,
I'm a little concerned now. Georgia Tech's using a two QB system with Aaron Philo and Haynes King. Philo's the true freshman who he's going to be good. He's good. But they obviously want to keep using Haynes King. That worked really well in the win against Miami. It works a lot less well in the game against NC State, which Georgia Tech needed a miracle to win. I don't know where to go with this one. Brent Key knows Kirby Smart very well. They've worked together. I think Brent Key can keep this game mucked up to the point where it's somewhat close. I don't think Georgia Tech's going to go in there and win. But 19.5 points is so many freaking points. That's my issue. Like I'm not saying Carson Beck reverts to the 3 interception Carson Beck. Like I think he's probably going to be fine. I just think there's a good chance because Georgia was probably better last year than it is this year. And that Georgia Tech team played an 8-point game against Georgia. Now that was in Atlanta, but I just feel like Georgia Tech can keep this one close, even if it's not. I'll give you an example. Notre Dame, Georgia Tech was not particularly close in the second half, but it would not have covered this spread.
Yeah. It's just that it's at Georgia.
Right.
And I think that matters in this type of situation.
It does. I mean, I think the Tennessee game was a great example of that. You saw how much more cleanly Georgia's offense operated.
But Georgia Tech is not like a joke team. Like they're a very
Georgia Tech's
football team.
Georgia Tech is they have a puncher's chance to win the game.
See, I'm not going to go there. I don't think they have a puncher's chance to win the game. I think that they're probably going to cover though. I'm taking Georgia Tech to cover because it is just an obscene amount of points. That's if you put this thing at 13.5, I'd be taking Georgia all day. But if you're going to be almost 3 touchdowns, I'm taking Georgia Tech here. Yeah, or if you wanted to get really froggy, just wait for Georgia to go up 7-0 in the first quarter, and then you can get it at 26.5 or something. That would be great.
Right. The back door is wide open at that point. Like wide open. I think this is going to be, and especially like the Black Friday aspect of it. It's a weird week, shorter week. It's just everything feels weird. Yeah, I'm probably going to say that 10 times as we pick these games.
Yeah.
I think that's
and I also problem. Think too that I wonder, and I don't know if there's like a way to look this up. Probably not. But when you have a very bizarre week, like we did on Saturday, like your mind stays there into the following week. And I don't know what the stats are in terms of like crazy Saturday, one of the craziest Saturdays we've had in a long time. Then the following week, it just returns to normal usually, right? Like I don't feel like the craziness goes 2 weeks in a row. So,
well, and that's
kind of anticipating that this weekend's going to return to normal.
As I was going through these picks, there's a couple scenarios where I'm like, oh, this is easy. Like this is going to like the normal part of my brain is like, yeah, this will be what it is. But then there are other games, and this is one of them where it's just like I'm in a blender because I saw what I saw last week. I've seen what I've seen the last few weeks of this season. I've seen Georgia look different, and I don't know which Georgia this is. I'm assuming it's the Georgia we saw against Tennessee, which if it is, there is a chance that they cover in this game.
Yeah.
But I feel comfortable that Georgia wins. I just don't feel comfortable that Georgia wins by that much.
Yeah, I'm with you.
All right. Next up. Nebraska at Iowa, another Black Friday game. We always pick the Iowa total, but this time we're picking the point spread too. I am shocked that Iowa's favored in this game, Ari. Are you?
No.
Okay.
Why
Not
are
only
you
are they
shocked?
favored, this opened at 4.5. They are now favored by 5.5.
Why are you shocked?
They're starting a freshman walk-on quarterback against that Nebraska defense.
Yeah. It's a one possession game and Nebraska's involved in it. I know they're bowl eligible right now. But also that wasn't a one possession game. So I guess if Nebraska's going to win, they've got to win by
I'm not sure this is a one possession game, Ari. Like,
you think
I don't know that Iowa's going to be able to move the ball on them.
Yeah, no, I know. We've seen Iowa operate in one possession games where they can't get a first down for a lot of years, but their defense isn't as good this year. I still think that they could totally win this game by 6.
They could.
Like, I don't know about you, but I
don't
know that like Nebraska's offense is something that makes me like quiver in my boots.
I'm not scared of Nebraska's offense at all, and I realize they did just kind of explode against Wisconsin. And you could say, well, now that they've had Dan Holgerson calling it for a couple of weeks, he's got it locked in. That's why I'm leaning Nebraska, but I could absolutely see exactly what you said, where Iowa can't get a first down, but they have a couple turnovers that give them short fields. They kick some field goals. They have a punt return for a touchdown. I can easily see that happening, but I also could see Iowa not crossing the 50 in this game. And so we didn't talk at all about the Iowa quarterback situation last week because there's so much going on. That was a weird deal. Cade McNamara, they announced he's cleared to play. He says, no, I'm not. I still have concussion symptoms. And there's this whole back and forth. And they end up starting Jackson Stratton. And Kirk Ferentz said
the kid that was playing linebacker
the Maryland game that Jackson Stratton's going to play this game too.
And that's the kid that was playing like scout team linebacker earlier in the year, right?
Right, receiver, I believe. Yeah.
Oh, I thought it was playing defense. Are you sure?
I'm not positive, but I did read, very informative Scott Dockerman story about the whole situation last week. It is very strange. It's one of those things where obviously everybody's being very careful about what they say, because Cade McNamara, if he says, hey, I've still got concussion symptoms, I can't play, they're gonna back off. Goat Dog pointing out you're not cursed, you were just ass. That's right. Nebraska wasn't cursed. They were just bad, and maybe they're not bad anymore.
Yeah, and now you're picking the money line on the road in a rivalry.
I wasn't going to pick the money line. I was going to take the points.
You're going to take the points? No, be a man. I've been taking money line. I bet Auburn money line last week.
Fine.
Sometimes you got to put your nuts on the table, Andy. I like if Nebraska won this game, it would be the least surprising thing in the world. But also, too, 24-17 or something like that, or 20-14. You know what I like is the under.
I do
Iowa
too.
Wins this game and covers. I don't know. I think the game could be like 13-9 or something. You know what I mean? Like that's the type of game I'm
100%.
So,
we were an Iowa over podcast. We are not this
sorry
week.
I said it.
Yeah, we're not. Like I already wrote it down. I was typing up. We've got a written version of this that comes out after the show, and I was typing up my picks, and I have under 39.5 written down because I really think Iowa's going to struggle to move the ball. I suspect Nebraska is also going to struggle to move the ball. Like this feels like a very low scoring game to me. But Ari, I'm going to do it. Okay. Nebraska money line under 39.5.
Yeah. I mean, I'm going to take the points too, but I also am going to be afraid to do it, but I also am going to take the under. So I'm going to write Nebraska plus 5.5, but I feel like they're going to like potentially lose like 13-9. Or 16,
13-9, you
12.
win. Yeah. Bad at math podcast.
No, we'll lose 13-9.
Right. If they lose 13-9, you win.
Yeah. That's why I'm taking the points. That's what I'm saying. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Okay. All right. There we go. Another big rivalry game. This is one I feel like we've been assuming a result for about a month. And now that it's here, I'm not so sure I assume that result. South Carolina at Clemson. Clemson's a 2.5-point favorite in this game. The result I think we've been assuming for a month is that South Carolina will win. You are shaking your head.
That's wrong. That's not right. Clemson's not better than South Carolina right now. And I understand it's a rivalry game. I know it's at Clemson, but I'm taking South Carolina money line and not even thinking about it.
I'm not taking South Carolina. I'm going to take those 2.5 measly points because I just took the money line in another one because the seeds of doubt crept in when Vegas made Clemson a favorite. And I don't know if that was to rope-a-dope people into just hitting South Carolina hard and swinging it back the other way. Do you think this line's going to flip during the week?
I do. Yeah.
I do too. This is why I'll take some free points if they're going to give them to me because
but here's the thing. There are a lot of casual bettors out there that don't watch the sport like us and will just think that South Carolina is South Carolina. Like if South Carolina plays a good, clean football game, they are better this year than Clemson. Like, is that a fair thing to say?
I think that's a very fair thing to say. Cade Klubnik has torched some teams with his legs, but those are all teams that don't have the kind of speed on defense that South Carolina has.
Yeah. And somebody just accused me of recency bias. Isn't like we're picking how teams are playing.
The game's this week, so what happened recently matters.
No, I mean, if I'm not paying attention, then, someone's saying I'm not paying attention. Enlighten me. I watched the entire Louisville game, and I think that team's issues aren't easily fixable when you're playing a really good opponent.
Right. And South Carolina has a better defense than let's say Clemson did backdoor into the ACC championship game. South Carolina still might have a better defense than anybody Clemson might play going forward after that.
Yeah.
Is that fair?
I think that's fair. Yeah. People in the chat are accusing me of being recency bias, but like that's what they were saying last week when I took Kansas.
The game is this week. What happened in the last few weeks matters.
Yeah, like in the games at Clemson, I get it. Like I'm not saying that Clemson cannot win. That's what gambling is. But if I had to pay my money, I'd feel safer with it on South Carolina. I think South Carolina has multiple ways it can win the football game. And I don't know if Clemson has multiple ways.
I think you're right about that. And and South Carolina's offense has come around to like this feels very similar to 2 years ago when South Carolina went up there. The difference is 2 years ago, South Carolina kind of flipped a switch and beat Tennessee and then beat Clemson. South Carolina's been doing this for a month now, maybe longer, probably since the Alabama game, which they should have won, but they didn't. But they were playing well in that game. This is going to be
the only game that South Carolina should not have won was Ole Miss on their entire schedule.
Right. They got clobbered in that game.
Yeah.
So
they should have beaten LSU. They should have beaten Alabama.
I'll take South Carolina to cover. You will take South Carolina money line. Producer River has put up a poll. 87% of the chat is picking South Carolina in this game. I think we're dealing with a few outliers here. You're getting yelled at by a few outliers, Ari, and it's getting in your head. I don't think you need to worry about that.
That's my number one thing I need to work on is who I'm yelled at and who I respond to. Yeah.
Tiger fan 24, Clemson fan. This is a very reasonable take here. We can win if we show up. If we don't, it's going to be ugly. I think that's exactly right. Clemson can win this game. It's not a foregone conclusion that South Carolina wins. But Clemson has to play one of its better games this season to win it. South Carolina just has to play an average game to beat Clemson.
Clemson needs Miami or SMU to lose to get in, right? Or are they like chaos away from being 10-2 and getting in as a third ACC team? Is there a path for that?
I think one of the 3-loss SEC teams would get in over a 10-2 Clemson that didn't make the ACC championship.
If Clemson beats up on or looks superior to South Carolina, does that send a message to the committee?
It would certainly help because it would put them in the same sphere as Alabama and Ole Miss,
with a fewer loss,
which both beat South Carolina as well.
We do this every year or every week, but like they lost fewer. They have one fewer loss. That matters. It should matter.
No, it doesn't. Who do you think would win if they played? Who do you think would win if Clemson played Alabama or Ole Miss? They played an easier
I just picked
schedule.
South Carolina.
They had
did
one
play
fewer
an
loss
easier
because
schedule.
they played an easier schedule. You keep saying that the wins and losses, but it also matters. Did you play an easier schedule?
So if you play an easy schedule, you have to live up to the standard of the 4-team field. And if you play a hard schedule, whatever happens to you
No,
doesn't
if you
matter.
play
Is
an
that what
easy
you're saying?
schedule,
Okay.
you should win more games. If you play a harder
They did
schedule,
win
you
more
should win
games.
fewer games.
They literally
Like,
won more
that's
games
how
than
it
the teams
works.
we're talking about.
And the way you played in those games should be judged. Like, if you played a harder schedule and you got your ass kicked in the games you lost, then we're not even having a conversation here.
I know, but you said they have to win more games, and they did.
Okay, but one more win than the team that played the much harder schedule does not mean they are definitively a better team or more deserving of being in the playoff.
I know, but if being 10-2 isn't enough, then what you're saying is that if you have an easy schedule, you have to play a season
let's say
that's good enough to get into
Clemson
the
kicks the
14
crap
field.
out of South Carolina.
I'm just playing devil's advocate here. I'm not trying to
this is instructive because this is the argument that will happen in the committee room.
Yeah.
Clemson kicks the crap out of South Carolina.
34-10.
You're now arguing between 10-2 Clemson and 9-3 Ole Miss. Both of them beat South Carolina. Both of them played Georgia. What happened when they played Georgia?
Yeah, that's right. I think that Clemson is screwed because of how it lost to Georgia.
Bingo.
I think
if you get your ass kicked.
Yeah. And I'm not saying that I think I would put them in. The thing that is frustrating to me, though, is because strength of schedule is such an important metric. I'm not even saying it's the right or wrong thing here, but I'm saying you're holding Clemson in this specific scenario to the 4-team field standard. Because
nope. I'm holding them to this standard because they played Georgia like Ole Miss played Georgia, and they happened to play some easier games than Ole Miss's other games that they played.
But I'm saying the difference between 10-2 and one loss for Clemson is the difference between getting into the 12-team and the 4-team. That's all I'm saying. They have to be a one-loss team that is potentially a conference champion to get in this year.
Because when you play a schedule, you need to win more games. When you play a harder schedule, you don't have to win as many games. That's logic.
Right. But then at the end of the year, SMU will have played an easier schedule because Clemson has played a harder schedule than SMU, right?
Agreed.
It's similar, but they've played, so they'll both be 2 lost teams and played in the same conference. But
they did play in the same conference, and SMU didn't lose any games in the conference and beat the team on the road that Clemson lost to at home in conference.
Yeah. I'm just trying to figure out a way for Clemson because 10-2 with a blowout loss in your opener.
I don't think there's a way because, unfortunately, the thing that would help them is beating South Carolina, and the same thing that is holding back South Carolina. Like, South Carolina beats Clemson, they're not getting in either. Like, the thing that's holding back South Carolina would also hold back Clemson.
Yeah, teams in your way.
But yeah,
if you would have told me Clemson will be 10-2 at the end of the year, and their only loss would be or they only have one loss in ACC play, I'd be like, they'd probably be like the 11 or 10 seed. Like, that's what my assumption would have been coming into the year. And it just sucks because we're talking about at the beginning of the show, Alabama getting in as a 3-loss team after losing 21-3 or whatever it was on Saturday to Oklahoma, but Clemson hasn't been good enough. Like, I just don't know. I really just don't know if I'm like 100% on board with that. That's all.
Well, we're going to get to the Miami-Syracuse game because all of this conversation may just blow up.
Because the most important metric that you can go off of, the most important one to me, is your record. That's why they keep them. All the other things are
not all
secondary and ancillary.
I can make a schedule where my record's going to be a hell of a lot better.
But I start at record.
Yeah, see, you're the reason we're going to get a bunch of shitty non-conference games. Because if you say that, then teams will schedule the worst possible opponents to make sure that they don't lose games. So thanks, sorry for that. I'd rather play good games.
Talk to Clemson about how the merits of scheduling Georgia. Let them know how you feel about it.
If they beaten Georgia, they'd unequivocally be in. Win.
But they have nothing to gain from it.
Oh, no. If they'd beaten Georgia, they'd unequivocally be in. They would have gained something there.
And if they
got their ass kicked, which showed us something.
And if they didn't play him at all, they would have.
Thank you, Ari, for the crappy games. We're moving on. It's your fault. We're going to get crappy games in the future. Just you.
You think that I have that much influence?
Just you. Yes, it's your fault.
I wish I had this much influence of like cash coming into my account.
Okay,
what
it's the
can I do?
committee's fault.
It's my money and I want it
fault.
now. Like, listen, that's the thing. But that's the thing that it's not my fault. It's your fault for saying the reason why they can't play that game is that they're out if they lose it. You're the one holding them out. You know what you should do? You should reward them.
I want them to be rewarded, but they don't get rewarded for getting their ass kicked. You got to win it, or at least show up.
But also, too, what if we came up with a way where if you play a top 10 team in the first 2 weeks of the season, like it's weighted less than other games would be on your schedule or something? Like, because you cannot have an environment where you're burying Clemson's entire season because it didn't play well.
I'm not burying Clemson's entire season. If they'd beaten Louisville, there wouldn't be a problem.
I know, but they actually do. They had a pretty good year. As all I'm like, they didn't have a dog shit year, and we're talking about them like they're like a 4-loss team right now.
Well, again,
they lost in a neutral site. Wasn't it in Atlanta too? To Georgia.
It was in Atlanta
by 100.
Clemson is very close to Atlanta as well.
But they basically navigated their schedule. Like, also too, they got their ass kicked by Louisville. Like, I don't even know why I've become the champion of Clemson.
I know. I don't understand why this is the hill you've chosen to die on.
Because it's not Clemson, it's situations like Clemson. Like, because there's other teams that are going to be in this situation.
Clemson lost to Louisville on like a controversial call or a last-second kick, like we're having a very different conversation right now. Very different.
Squirrel, Andy, move on.
Oh, thank you, JC, in the chat. I appreciate that. Squirrel. All right, we are going to move on. First, we're going to talk about PrizePicks. Download the app. Best daily fantasy game in America. Use the code STAPLES when you sign up. Play $5. Get $50 instantly. They are populating the college football board for this week. It will get more populated as the week goes on. You play some Monday Night Football right now, though. Like some clashing allegiances here. J.K. Dobbins, Chargers running back, 48.5 rushing yards, more or less. Could J.K. Dobbins, a Buckeye, help Jim Harbaugh's team win a game? This is a Harbaugh Bowl on Monday Night Football. You've got the Chargers and you've got the Ravens. Jim Harbaugh versus John Harbaugh for the first time since that Super Bowl where the lights went out. Come on. Justin Herbert, 257.5 passing yards, more or less. Derrick Henry, 86.5 rushing yards, more or less. You decide. You play as few as 2 squares. The more squares you play, the higher the potential payout. Download the PrizePicks app. Use the code STAPLES. Play $5. Get $50 instantly. All right, Ari. We have a lot more games to pick. This show is going to last forever if we get sidetracked every single time. But I actually think we need to have that argument, and we can have it on a lot of these different games. So we've had the argument. So if you want us to have the argument again, refer back to the Clemson, South Carolina pick, and you'll have it. Oh, Scott wants to know if Ari's going to cancel Thanksgiving as well, because it's Ari's fault. They're going to be crappy games going forward. Just remember,
I have one request to
blame
Andy
him.
this week. We do need to have a sides discussion. I know we do it every year, but
yes,
at some point this week.
Thursday's show. I'm going to tell you right now. I'm going to take you behind the curtain. We're going to pre-record Thursday's show on Wednesday so everybody can have fun with their families on Thursday. Thursday's show is going to be a mailbag show. So get your questions in. AndyStaplesOn3@gmail.com. Andy_Staples or at Ari Wasserman on social media. Send us your questions. 30 minutes of that show might be us arguing about Thanksgiving sides. Warning you now.
And it's a Thanksgiving show. That's what you should get in the mood. But like, I'm going to give you a hot take before to go into it.
Save it. Save it. I want to hear it on Thursday's show because I have a feeling I'm going to go ballistic here. I'm already mad at you for making crappy games in the future. Let's not make it worse. All right, let's stay in the SEC, though. The Champions of Life Bowl. Tennessee at Vanderbilt. Tennessee opened as a 10.5-point favorite, has moved up to an 11.5-point favorite. If you don't know what I'm referencing when I say Champions of Life Bowl, it's 2016. Remember, Tennessee beats Florida and Georgia, then somehow doesn't win the SEC East, then loses to Vanderbilt and doesn't even go to the Sugar Bowl. That's when somebody asked Butch Jones before the game, what will you tell them? Because you didn't win the SEC East, and they had a chance at a championship, and they blew it. And he's like, well, they're champions of life. And then later on signing day, he talked about signing people with 5-star hearts because they didn't sign anybody with 5-star ratings. What a time to be alive that was. Ari, Vandy only has one loss by more than 11.5 points. It's that South Carolina game. It was at home. Do we think Tennessee can do that to them? Do we think Tennessee can win by 12 or more? Because this Vandy team has proven very tough to beat by that many points.
There are two ways to look at it. One, it's Tennessee is finally firmly in the playoff. There's no more debate to be had. They go out and take care of business. Nico has his best game at the right time, and Tennessee goes into the playoff feeling great. And then there's also Tennessee grab ass central. Like, we're not going to pick teams here. We're going to pick spots. Do we like this spot for Tennessee? Because this seems like a tricky spot for Tennessee.
I don't like the spot.
Like,
I don't like this. If Vandy were coming off a win at LSU, I'd almost feel better about Tennessee in that situation.
Like,
now Vandy's pissed because they didn't play well at LSU. They should have played better. Like, I don't like this at all for Tennessee.
And Vandy,
I really don't.
Vandy doesn't seem as dangerous as they did a month ago anymore. Like, the Vandy steam kind of ran out a little bit. So, like, the Diego Pavia mania that we were all in the middle of October is gone. And people might forget that it exists. And it still exists. Like, I think Tennessee is going to win. I think this is going to be a pretty close game. Like, just because of the spot that we're in. And, like, how many times, too, and it's funny that you brought up the Champions of Life Bowl, but, like, a team finally breaks through and gets where it wants to go, and then, like, grab ass waiting for him right around the corner. And we've been circling this game for a long time. Like, this game means
something to Vandy. Like, the whole state champs thing, like, this means a lot to Vandy. It should mean a lot to Tennessee. Here's the thing, all right. I think Tennessee wins this game. I just don't think they cover. And the thing about it is, this is where gambling in real life branch off. It doesn't matter if they cover. It doesn't matter how they win. Tennessee just needs to win by 1 point, and they are probably in the college football playoff. Like, almost definitely in the college football playoff. Win by 1 point. Don't care how you do it. Figure out a way to get it done. That's why I'm taking Vandy to cover, because I do think they're going to keep this close. But all Tennessee has to do is win by a point.
Yeah, I think Vanderbilt has a tremendous amount of pride to be playing for here. And I think that can be a powerful thing. Like, I don't know, the mindset of a Vandy fan. Like, I think that there was a time where some Vandy fans were probably upset because they felt like they had a chance to have a very memorable season go out the window. Because it really could have started, 7-0?
Yes.
And they were kind of in the Texas game. They beat Auburn. Like, I think that they beating Auburn on the road is kind of just proof to me, beating Alabama, that they can exist in these games. Tennessee's offense is not nearly as explosive enough, unless it has a huge coming out party, which is possible. I think Tennessee wins, but I think that Vanderbilt's going to give them every ounce that they can handle in this game.
Yeah, that's why I'm taking Vandy to cover. I don't think they're going to win, but I wouldn't be shocked. The most shock, and that's what you're talking about, picking spots. The most shocking outcome to me in this game would be Tennessee beating them by 20. Vandy winning by 20 would also be shocking.
Yeah.
But I
think Vandy winning would still be shocking.
Result would be shocking to me.
I think Vandy winning would be relatively shocking.
I don't know that it would shock me. I think it's possible. Andrew in the chat points out that Heupel has covered every time versus Vandy, but I think we're very clearly understanding this is a different Vandy team than those.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a solid team. It's a good team. So, I like talking about Tennessee and just like looking down at the camera at River just to see like what his facial expressions are going to be. I'm sure you guys know this by now, but producer River's a huge Tennessee fan, and he's feeling pretty good right now. And I just don't know, like, there are just certain fan bases too. It's like, can't you just have something nice that just like, I just feel like there is a certain element of like Tennessee fans and Texas A&M fans are like shaking hands of like, can't we just be happy? Like,
I will feel so bad for Tennessee fans if they lose this game. Like, I will feel awful for them if they lose this game. Because this is like, how many times do you have to get kicked in the nards as a fan base? Like, and this would be the cruelest one of all. Like, lose to Vandy and miss the playoff because you lost to Vandy.
But if Tennessee loses to Vandy, at least we don't have to see Alabama in the playoff. Would that effectively eliminate them?
Because it. Yeah. I think you're probably right about that. All right.
So maybe Vandy will be doing America a favor.
Yeah, Tennessee would be blocking Alabama from the playoff at that point. Let us move to a game that probably was the first one.
Get the entire SEC in. I think they should put Vanderbilt in this freaking thing. You know how hard their schedule was this year, Andy? Their record stinks because they played the hardest schedule. Put them all in.
They lost to Georgia State, Ari.
Non-conference losses matter. It's just the ones in conference that don't matter. You can lose to anybody but Mississippi State in the SEC, and it's okay. But if you lose to Georgia State, you're freaking out. You're out.
I didn't put the Egg Bowl in here, but that's another one I'm watching. Like, oh God, that could be bad.
Yeah,
because Ole Miss has nothing to play for right now. But let's go to a different rivalry game where one team has very much to play for. Both teams obviously playing for pride. Michigan, Ohio State. This would have been the first game we talked about any other year. Ohio State is a 20.5-point favorite in this game. Ari, I know you're not a throw out the record books. Anything can happen in a rivalry game person. I usually am. I am not in this case. I think Ohio State is going to take out 3 years of frustration on Michigan on Saturday.
Yeah, you do.
Mm-hmm.
Every single year we.
Are you going to talk into your mic?
Every single. I'm warming my hands. I got some takes.
Give me the graphic. Give me the graphic.
Is that a? I don't have a mic issue.
Oh, you have an issue when you don't talk into your mic and we can't hear you.
I got to get that stand. When you're here, can we go together and do it like a little Black Friday shopping?
Yes, we're going to film our trip to Best Buy to get Ari a mic stand.
I might just buy a new mic because this mic is like 10 years old and it's going to crap out on me at any moment. But so I have two ways of thinking about this. It's Ohio State is much better than Michigan at every position on the field, maybe outside of defensive line. They're at home. They have a playoff spot locked up, so they don't have to feel like losing ruins their season. They play looser than they usually do. They get out to an early lead, and then Ryan Day, who I assume or know, I don't know how he feels about Sharon Moore, but I know how he feels about Jim Harbaugh. Just completely runs the score up and wins, 60 to whatever. Because I think that Ohio State has that in them. Like if they get rolling, I think that they could do it. On the other hand, I was a kid during the 90s, but while being on the beat, was very, very familiar with what happened in that decade. And there have been
calling Ryan Day John Cooper. Oh boy. I realize those comparisons.
I'm not calling him John Cooper.
Around.
It's a different era. Like John Cooper was terrible at playing Michigan, but I think that the same elements of what occurred in the 90s are existing right now, which is Ohio State has a stark talent advantage, which they've had at least 2 of the last 3 years and still lost. And there is a mental lockup with that team. In the building, people are tense. They're tight. They're not approaching the rivalry the right way, and Ryan Day needs this. He knows he needs this. And I think that the needing it aspect of it, if you come out and you turn the ball over or something goes wrong at the beginning of the game, Michigan is coming off a game in which it scored 50. Is this a possibility that Michigan, because Ohio State is tight and tense, keeps this game closer than the talent suggests that it should?
No.
You don't think that's possible?
For you?
Okay.
No. I think Ohio State rolls in this one. I really do. And maybe if I'm proven wrong, great. We get a really interesting game to watch. But I do think because all of this has been loaded on to Ryan Day and this team, you have to beat Michigan. If you don't beat Michigan, you're utter failures. If you don't beat Michigan, Ryan Day, you better don't even come back to work on Sunday. Okay. I think he's going to say message received, and I think he's going to take care of business. So, and of course, we have the hardest picture of Ryan Day in the world running as I say that. I do think they take care of business here. I think they roll. I will take Ohio State to cover the 3 touchdown spread.
I have to go look this up because I don't remember. But do you know who was on Ohio State's team in 1996? Can I name some names off?
Orlando Pace.
Do you want me to do it? Want me to have fun with this?
Yeah. It's a. I
don't know if you know.
Go ahead.
Joe Germain was their quarterback. He played in the NFL, but it wasn't really an NFL guy. Joe Montgomery, the running back, played in the NFL. Michael Wiley, Nick Goings, David Boston, Orlando Pace, Mike Vrabel, Andy Katzenmoyer, Ty Howard, Damon Moore, Sean Springs, and Antoine Winfield were on that team. They lost 13-9.
I remember that game because that game affected the team I was on. Because remember, I was on the Florida team. We lost to Florida State in Tallahassee. Ohio State losing opened the door. And remember, at the time, it was the Bowl Alliance. So the Big Ten champ was going to the Rose Bowl no matter what. So they were trying to set up a 1 versus 2 game in the Sugar Bowl, but you couldn't if one of those teams was in the Rose Bowl. So there was very much a split national title possibility. All of that was going on. And then needed Jake the Snake Plummer to lose to Ohio State in the Rose Bowl because Arizona State was very good that year too and had beaten Nebraska. So
yeah, in fairness too, like Michigan had a bunch of NFL players, like Bob Greasy.
Right, that was a very good
Brian
Michigan
Greasy,
team as well. But
Michigan had one
Ohio
NFL
State
player on their entire defense, and Ohio State scored 9 points in that game. So like, and like that is just the 96 year. They lost in 97, I think, to. All I'm saying is that like you could break it down based on who's on the team and how good they look and who's going to the NFL and all that stuff. And like, if you are not approaching this the right way,
yeah, I mean, by that standard,
close games happen.
Yeah, by that standard, this Michigan team, if we're talking about that, this Michigan team has more NFL players than that 96 Michigan team.
Like, there's no world where Michigan's defensive line has been spending 2 weeks preparing for what is going on with Ohio State's offensive line, and they just terrorize Ohio State's offense the entire game. Like, there's no route to victory here for you. Like,
no.
Okay.
And I'm sure it'll make the hype video, but that's okay. I don't think so. We got a bonus pick, Ari. I didn't have this game in here. I didn't even make Jacob, this pick yet. Jacob paid $5 in the chat to do this. Okay. Jacob, do you see Florida State beating the Gators? At the risk of sounding like a homer, no. Like the way Florida's playing with DJ Lagway starting, and Lagway was much more mobile against Ole Miss than we saw against LSU. If he can move around, it's going to be very tough to stop him.
Yeah. Yeah.
So sorry, Jacob.
I don't think that Florida State can beat any Power 4 team at this point, to be honest. So no, I don't think.
I realize Florida's on a high, and you think, okay, maybe they take Florida State. I don't think they're going to take Florida State lightly. I think that particular team, that Florida team's been through a lot this season. They would like to finish on a high before they go to a bowl game. So, and
also too, the winning those games in Florida is personal for those teams. Like beating
exactly, it's a big deal. Yeah.
My official pick, though, I think is Michigan plus 20.5.
Oh, okay. So you will take Michigan to cover.
I do. Yeah. I think that Ohio State, I've picked Ohio State to win each of the last 3 weeks or 3 years, sorry, and have been embarrassed by it. So I think Ohio State is much better. And I definitely could see a scenario where Ohio State runs it up, because the thing that's scary is that even if it's not a close game, Ohio State's not going to take their foot off the gas. So like that's where that point thing scares me. But I think that Michigan has some sort of voodoo dust over Ohio State the last 3 years, and I don't know if
I don't think it was voodoo dust. I just think they had a better team.
They didn't 2 and 3 years ago. They did last year,
but they did on the line of scrimmage 2 and 3 years ago, and I don't think that's the case this year.
Yeah, I don't think that Michigan's going to win. I'm just taking 20.5 points.
I know. Also, too, it's the same thing I did earlier. It's the same thing I did in the Georgia Tech-Georgia game. I understand.
That Michigan's just going to run the clock the entire game and try their best to make it a 1-possession game in the third quarter, and then once you get to that point, like pucker season starts, like that could happen. I covered a lot of games.
Would be the smart way to play
it. How
it
it goes out there. Like,
yeah.
How many times has Ryan Day ran up the score on anybody?
Not many.
Now he would love to do it, and he has the team to do it, and there's no excuse for them not to. But I do think that there is a tension in that building right now during this week, and that does manifest in the psyche of the players. That's all. It just stinks that Michigan's been so bad this year because no one could see it. But could you imagine if Michigan was 9-3 right now?
Oh, we would be having a very different conversation.
If Michigan was 9-3 and catching 10, everybody would take Michigan money line.
Yeah.
So
Producer River points out that Ryan Day ran up the score in Indiana last week.
Did he?
I mean, that if you call that last touchdown running up the score.
I mean, I guess. We had to pause our show from going live because we were waiting to see if the other team.
It was very annoying because we wanted some separation between that and the end of the Florida Ole Miss game. I mean, it didn't quite work out.
Yeah, I don't know if you run up the score if we're pausing the show to make sure that they don't win. You know, like
poor Ari got the whole Florida Ole Miss game spoiled because he could hear the crowd noise because I was in the press box.
They did win 59-32 in 2019 in Ohio State's 2019 team, which I think was Ryan Day's first year, right?
Yes.
Was one of the best teams that Ohio State's had in program history. So if you believe that this is one of those teams, I feel bad about this pick. Like I want to change, because everything in my brain tells me Ohio State, right? They've got better players or whatever. All the things that like conventional wisdom that you're using. I just think this game's different, man. And I don't know what it is, but it's possible that it's close.
It's so funny because I feel like we had the same conversation about Michigan, Ohio State, and Georgia Tech, and you and I came out on opposite sides of it.
Yeah.
For the same reasons. So, yeah, again, it's going to be a weird week. Last week was a weird week. Speaking of weird, this is the one that right before the show started, producer River goes, just going to say this one thing. USC money line. Notre Dame at USC. Notre Dame is a 6.5-point favorite. Notre Dame okay. Actually, before I say anything that sounds definitive, I want to ask you this. Does Notre Dame need to win this to make the college football playoff?
I'm not 100% sure of that anymore, but I think so.
I think so as well, but I think you may be right. There may be a little wiggle room there. Were you surprised at the spread?
No. Were you?
I was surprised. I thought Notre Dame would be favored by more.
I think USC is a pretty good team that does a lot of really stupid shit. Like
put that on a bumper sticker. That's the t-shirt right there.
Like when you watch them play, you feel like they should be better than they are, in my opinion.
Yes, agreed.
So I understand to a certain extent of like, if this spread was Notre Dame minus 11.5 or something, like I would take USC, I think. Like that's a lot of points. Like that you just got to get to a point where you have people taking action on both sides. And I feel like Notre Dame is going to win. I don't know that they're going to go in and blow them out. And also too, when you go back to the way that I broke down the Colorado game before they lost to Kansas, I kind of feel the same way about Notre Dame here a little bit of like, it's been a long time since something was hard for them. Like we've gone 2 months since Notre Dame has been in a game that it could lose. Like, are we just going to anticipate that they win 9 in a row to close their season without having to break a sweat? Like, is that where we're at?
You basically predicted that after they lost to Northern Illinois.
I predicted they would win all their games. I didn't predict that they would not sweat. I think that like there is an ease meter here, and I don't know. I think that Notre Dame is going to have to sweat at some point to get into this thing. There's no way that it could be that easy. So I think that Notre Dame will win. I think they might even cover, but like the spread makes perfect sense to me.
So this is, again, where gambling and real life diverge. All Notre Dame needs to win is by 1 point. Doesn't matter how they win. So it's just like Tennessee and Vanderbilt. Just win the game. I still think Notre Dame covers here because I can see this kind of shaking out like last year's USC Notre Dame game, which I realized was in South Bend, so different circumstances. But where if things don't go well early for USC, Notre Dame just kind of starts to pour it on. But if Notre Dame makes a couple mistakes early, USC's in this game, then it goes 4 quarters. It's a 1-possession game. But I will take Notre Dame to just kind of wear them out. The Georgia Tech Notre Dame game is the game I'm kind of comparing this to, where pretty good team, pretty good opponent. Now, granted, Georgia Tech did not have the quarterback situation it wanted in that game, but it was close for a half, and then Notre Dame just wore them out. I can see Notre Dame just wearing them out and covering. So I'm going to take Notre Dame to cover here.
I want to actually ask you for like real life help on real life gambling for me.
Okay.
So when Notre Dame lost to NIU, we were together.
We were. Yeah.
On the way home from that trip, I put in a $400 bet that Notre Dame would make the playoff at 5-1. Do you think I should take the points here as a semi-hedge in real life?
No, because I actually think, well, like we said,
because I can middle it too.
There's a non-zero chance that Notre Dame makes the playoff as a 2-loss team.
Yeah, they don't have any good enough. I don't think they have good enough wins, man.
I don't think so. But
yeah.
Ari, what happens if all the 2-loss teams lose this week?
It's definitely not a non-zero chance.
Yeah,
that's
the problem. Is if all the 2-loss teams lose and they're the only ones left, like they're probably still getting in.
Yeah, I'm just sitting on. I win $2,000 if Notre Dame wins on Saturday, and I'm thinking about maybe putting 500 on USC just to cover the 6.5. Because if I don't, then I win 1,500, and there's a chance I can middle it.
Now you may win both ways,
right? You
may win both ways in that situation.
Like Notre Dame wins by 5, they make the playoff. I cash the game ticket, and then I cash the. I'm just trying to like think this through. So,
I think it is a likely outcome that Notre Dame just leans on USC in the second half, and USC just breaks.
Yeah,
and it becomes a 17-point game, something like that.
And I think I would live with that. I think I'm going to take USC plus 6.5 in real life just for the total bet amount. So I'm living in a free roll, hope for a middle, and if Notre Dame wins by 100, then cash the 1,500 or 1,600. Like I think that's what.
Yeah, but you're also good in the middle. Like the middle's a real possibility there.
Yeah,
which would be great for you.
But I actually think that Notre Dame will cover this. I think that it won't be easy. I think that they'll probably win by 7-10. But I like Notre Dame in the game, like for show's purposes.
All right, moving on to a rivalry game. Another rivalry game where the better in 2024 team has lost 3 in a row in the series. Washington going to Oregon. Oregon is a 19.5-point favorite. Oregon has lost 3 in a row in this series, 2 of them last year, the regular season game in the Pac-12 championship, and then obviously the regular season game in 2022. Ari, I feel about this one the same way I feel about Ohio State and Michigan. I think Oregon is going to take out 3 losses worth of frustration on Washington. If this game were in Seattle, where Washington hasn't lost this year, I think that might make me feel a little bit differently. But since they got to go to Autzen, it's a huge number. But I'll take Oregon to cover.
Yeah, it kind of is just like the same basic numbers. The Ohio State Michigan game, and
it's 1 point difference.
Team that's struggled in the rivalry is the monster this year, and the team that's been winning the rivalry recently is the underdog. Dan Lanning probably wants this game every bit as much as Ryan Day wants the Michigan game, right? Now, I don't know if this rivalry is nearly as intense as the Ohio State-Michigan game, but it's still a pretty big deal for these programs. So, I've never won an Oregon bet my entire life. If I ever take the points, they win by 50, and if I ever bet on them, they can't get a first down for some reason. I never know what side to be on, but my gut here is that Oregon, because you saw the differential between Washington at home and away, right? Like Washington at home is like
a very different
ball team. So the fact that it's at Autzen, I think that they could win this game by 20.
Levi asked an interesting question in the chat, though. Did Washington expose the blueprint to beat them, though? I don't. Did Wisconsin expose the blueprint to beat Oregon? I don't think they did. I think that had a lot more to do with Oregon was on the last game of a long stretch of games. I think it was the longest stretch anybody had to play all season without a bye week because everybody's got 2 bye weeks this year. I think they just caught Oregon at the right time. I think Washington is catching Oregon at a precisely the wrong time.
Yeah. And, Oregon is clinched for the Big Ten championship game, and it kind of feels like this may not matter at all. So, but it matters in terms of what it means for the program. So I think that Oregon's going to roll in this game. They're just a really, really good team and one that I think has a chance to win the national title this year. A real one.
Yeah. This is one that Dan Lanning probably gets out a lot of his frustration, because remember, those losses to Washington were albatrosses around Dan Lanning, and he kind of needed the win against Ohio State for us to say, oh, you can win a big game, because those Washington games were all huge games, and they just he couldn't win them. Like he got close a couple times, but then the Pac-12 championship game, Washington just sort of put the foot on the accelerator, physically dominated Oregon up front, and that was the end of that. So yeah, I don't know what's going to happen in this game. Will Rogers, we think, is going to stay the starting quarterback at Washington. Damon Williams Jr. has been coming in. I think it's going to be Will Rogers.
Yeah, and Tez Johnson's back, right?
Yes, Tez Johnson is back for Oregon. So I think Oregon rolls in this one. Ari, let us go to one that is a lot tougher to pick. Farmageddon! Kansas State at Iowa State. We're not picking all the games that will affect the Big 12 title race, because I'd like Colorado, Oklahoma State. I don't think there's a lot of strong opinions on both sides. I think everybody thinks Colorado's going to win that one. But Kansas State, Iowa State. Iowa State's a 2.5-point favorite at home. Before Kansas State thumped Cincinnati last week, I was a little worried that Kansas State is just kind of sliding. Now I look at this game like, okay, both of them are back. Iowa State, it's hard. It's crazy because this was only like 3-4 weeks ago. Iowa State was the front runner in the Big 12 for a lot of the season. And we thought they would be the one that would control things. They now control their destiny, essentially. If they win the next 2 games, they are in the college football playoff, but they have to win this one first. What do we think happens here?
But Iowa State also still needs some help, right? I
don't believe so. I believe if they win, they're in.
Okay. If it's a 4-way tie, they're in. You would know, I guess, if you were playing with the calculator.
If they win this game, they're in.
Okay. I didn't know if there was any results that could happen that could keep them out, but if you're saying that, I trust that. Iowa State has been pretty money this year, and I know that we lost track of them when they lost 2 games in a row, but they've won a lot of closely contested games at the last minute and were in position to do it in their Texas Tech loss, and they gave up a touchdown after taking a go-ahead score with less than 2 minutes left. Like I feel like they're very clutch. And I think that it definitely helps that they're at home and they finally fought their way back into the position that they were in all year. I think that Iowa State is the better football team here. I think that they're at home, and I think they have proven that they can close games for the most part in this environment. Like I think that Iowa State is going to win this game, and I actually also think that they have a real shot to beat ASU if that's who they play in the Big 12 championship game.
I think they have a real shot of winning the Big 12. I also think they have a real shot of losing this game. Andrew in the chat with a really interesting point. May favor K-State because of the weather. So Iowa State's got to throw it to win. K-State, for the most part, is going to try to keep the ball on the ground if things work out the way they want it to. It's a 2.5-point spread. Ari, do you know what the high temperature in Ames is on Saturday?
14 degrees.
25. High of 25, low of 8. Clear skies.
No snow?
No snow. There was a snowy game last year. Last year was a blast to watch in the snow in Manhattan. This is supposed to be clear with a 12-mile-an-hour wind. So it's a night game, so it's going to be really cold.
Frigid.
But yeah, it kind of not as bad as that Dolphins Chiefs playoff game last year. That was below 0 wind chills. This will be This will be very, very cold. I might go with the team that I feel better about on the ground in this situation, especially with only a 2.5-point spread. Give me the Wildcats.
Yeah. Okay, well, I'm happy to be on opposite sides. Iowa State's got really good receivers, and they throw the ball very well if you think that they can't because it's cold.
It's going to be like throwing a frozen turkey out there. Catching a frozen turkey.
You know, when you were a kid and used to play like those turkey bowls and you would like catch a ball in the freezing cold and it would just hit your finger, how bad that hurt.
It's just funny that the kids who grew up in Scottsdale and Orlando are saying this.
Yeah, no, and not mine. And when I was complaining, what I was just saying, my scenario was at 75 degrees. So like, I don't know like what it would be like to be 15, but no, I could see what you're saying.
Yeah, this game was a big weather game last year. Could be again. All right.
5 games left. Oh boy.
It's rivalry week. You get a jam-packed pick show. That's just how it works. Louisville at Kentucky. Kentucky is a 3.5-point dog at home. Ari, I'm going to go quickly on this pick because I feel like this is an easy one to make because Kentucky's won 5 in a row. In a couple of instances, Kentucky's not been the better team. Kentucky wins in this rivalry. If you're going to give me 3.5 points, I will take 3.5 points. Give me Kentucky to cover.
Yeah, Kentucky's just like broken right now, though, aren't they?
They put up a decent fight against Texas last week. I don't think they're completely broken.
Yeah, they did put up a pretty good fight. All right, give me Kentucky.
Yeah, until Louisville proves it can win, I'm not going to believe it. I need to see Louisville beat Kentucky on the field in real life before I believe it. That's why I'm taking Kentucky. All right. We go to your alma mater, the Territorial Cup. Low-key, really bitter rivalry. Arizona State at Arizona. Arizona State's an 8.5-point favorite, which is interesting to me because Arizona's losses have been by a lot. Mm-hmm. Arizona State is the hottest team in the Big 12 other than Kansas, which is mathematically eliminated from the Big 12 title race. But if Arizona State wins here, I believe they're in unless BYU loses to Houston. But let me check. Let's make sure. You vamp, and I'm gonna run the scenarios here.
How many years ago was it when Arizona gave up 70 to Arizona State? Was that in 2021? I remember I was in Dallas.
It was Kevin Sumlin. It was the season Kevin Sumlin got fired.
Okay. Oh, it was during COVID. It was 2020. They lost 70-7. And I know this is a bitter rivalry, but it's unfortunate. But Arizona, a team that I thought had a lot of promise this year, just kind of stinks. And that's the hardest thing. I feel like this team could have had a real shot. Like if everybody would have stayed together and, Jed Fish wouldn't have left for Washington, I think Arizona would have been good enough to win the conference this year. But they just aren't what they were supposed to be, even though they have the best receiver or one of the 3 best receivers in college football on their roster. I don't love this spot for Arizona because, you might want to finish your season sneaking up on your opponent. Arizona State's feeling pretty good, whatever, but they're not quite playing for anything. And then you sneak up and get a win here. Arizona State is playing really, really well, and they're very confident, and their coach has this thing rolling. Like, I don't see how Arizona keeps this thing close, Andy. I just don't. Like, not within 10.
Well, and that's the thing. I was just looking at Arizona's games. Now, they did beat the crap out of Houston, but they've lost 4 of 5. The average margin of defeat in those losses is 24.3 points. Like, they've been getting their clocks cleaned in most cases.
Yeah.
This is one where I feel like if Arizona State comes out hot, Arizona doesn't mount much of a comeback. I think Arizona State covers here. I think they win. And I want to go back. So you were right about Iowa State potentially needing some help. I got it mixed up. I thought Arizona State had one little scenario where they didn't get in. It's actually Iowa State. So here's the scenario.
Yeah, I thought so.
There's one scenario where Iowa State can win Farmageddon and not play in the Big 12 title game, and that is if Houston beats BYU. Iowa State needs BYU to beat Houston. Otherwise, Iowa State's got a problem. Arizona State is in if they win.
Yeah. They're definitely going to win by 10.
I feel like the way Arizona's been losing games, this is not a great time to have to play this game for them. So
they've
yeah,
actually
I'll
lost
take Arizona
6 of
State to
7.
cover as well.
And going on the road to TCU and losing by 21, like there's not a lot of fight there. So
let us go to the Iron Bowl. Alabama just lost 24-3 against Oklahoma. Auburn just beat Texas A&M in a 4 overtime game. So naturally, Alabama is a double-digit favorite in this game. Ari, I will explain why, because Vegas loves history, and history tells us that Auburn does not play well in Tuscaloosa. The last time Auburn came within 10 points of Alabama was the comeback game. That was the 2010 Iron Bowl, where Auburn fell behind by a bunch. Cam Newton leads them back to a victory. Auburn rolls on to the national title. That was the last time Auburn came within 10 points of Alabama in Tuscaloosa. That is what Vegas is working off of right now. My question to you is 2024 such a different era versus all these other years that maybe that doesn't matter?
This spread is much bigger than I thought it would be. I thought it would be like 6.5. This is a lot of points, Andy, for a game in which I think Auburn could win.
Yes.
Right. I mean, I'm tempted. I'm going to take the points, but I gave you crap for not putting your balls on the table earlier. Like, what if I took a money line?
I don't feel that
dog.
Maybe because I don't feel particularly confident about this pick. Like, I feel very confident about that Nebraska-Iowa one. So you were smart to say what you said there. I would not say, I would not make fun of you for just taking the points in this game. Because I do think it is a bit of a bridge to Auburn wins outright, because they just typically don't play well in Tuscaloosa. But I understand where you're coming from, because it's why I asked that question. This is a really weird year. Nick Saban is not in Alabama anymore. Does history that involved Nick Saban even apply in this case?
Well, Auburn's getting 3.5 to 1 on the money line. So, like, to me, it's like 3.5 to 1 in a game that could get ugly. Alabama's down in the dumps. They only score 3 points against Oklahoma. They run the ball really well. Auburn does. Like, I think that there is a way that this game is within question in the fourth quarter. I mean, shit, it was last year, and Alabama was a team that we thought was really, really good. But on the other hand, too, it's like, you know, you fall into this trap of we don't really know what Alabama is, and then they come out and play one of their better games, and they end up kicking the crap out of them. Like, I think that's on the table, too. I mean, like, look at like the Missouri game, for instance, and I know that the LSU game.
The LSU game, yeah.
Like, you know, you play a team that you think could beat you, and then they win by 32, and it's like, holy crap, if Alabama would just play that well every week, they'd probably be number 1 in the country right now, but they don't. So, like, trying to figure out which Alabama shows up is a really hard thing to do. It's a tough proposition this year. But I think that Auburn is the best bad team in the entire sport. And I think getting 11.5 is a lot of points. I'm not going to take the money line, but I would be very comfortable taking the 11.5 here.
I don't know what to do here, because I think everything you just said is very smart. Everything you just said makes sense. But because weird shit just keeps happening, give me Alabama to cover.
Yeah, because that's also weird. Like, weirdness doesn't always have to manifest in somebody losing unexpectedly. Like, teams playing very sharp, amazing football when you see them playing terribly is also a weird result. So, like, if Alabama comes out and wins 34-10, that would be kind of weird to me, but also probably frustrating.
That'd be a very weird result. But we've seen Alabama, like, and I was gonna say, oh, we've only seen them do it at home, but no, we saw them do it in Baton Rouge. Like, they looked unstoppable that night.
Yeah,
it's so weird. My brain says do what you're doing, but it just feels like everything else is so strange this year. I don't know. Yeah, give me Alabama to cover. And if I look stupid, fine. I look stupid a lot with these picks. Let us go to a game that will affect the ACC title race and potentially the college football playoff race. Miami at Syracuse. If Miami wins, they play for the ACC title. There's a good chance, win or lose, they make the playoff in that scenario. If Syracuse wins, Miami's done. Syracuse is a 10.5-point dog at home. Look at the total on this game, Ari. 67.5, and that feels completely reasonable.
That's banana land. Miami fans are pooping their pants right now, right? Like this is a uncomfortable spot.
This is a scary spot. I don't like this spot at all. And look, Miami could come out and crush Syracuse. Entirely possible. But there's definitely a universe, right? Where this is a shootout back and forth, last team with the ball wins game.
You know what? Miami, I think, is probably more equipped to score 40 than Syracuse in this game, right? Like, I'm not saying Syracuse won't score. Everybody scores on Miami. But I think I like Miami here. I'm not just going to step my foot into the spot for every pick that I do. I think Miami, their offense, when humming, is something to behold, and I just do not think Syracuse can keep up with that, Andy, for 4 quarters.
I think this is one of the better offenses that Miami's played. We've seen Miami's defense struggle. And for that reason, I'm going to go the opposite of you. I'll take the points.
Yeah.
I still think Miami wins, but I think this could definitely be a shootout.
Yeah. Well, if it turns into a shootout, then Miami could lose. But I also feel like if it's a shootout, Miami could win by 14 because there's one weird turnover in the fourth quarter of a 31-31
The Louisville game. Yeah, the Miami-Louisville game.
It's the same thing that happened in the Louisville game. So, I think that's kind of how I feel like it plays out. I'm not saying that Syracuse can't exist in that game. I don't think if they can exist in it for 4 full quarters before they blow it.
Yeah, this is Kyle McCord's chance to write his name in the history books. It didn't work out this weekend last year for him. This is his chance to have it turn out differently. But yeah, I think this is going to be one of the more fun games of the day. I can't wait to watch it. But let's move to what we think will be the most fun game of the day, the one that you and I will be attending. Going to Kyle Field, Texas versus Texas A&M, with a spot in the SEC championship game on the line. The first time these two teams have played since 2011, which was Texas A&M's last year in the Big 12. These teams hate each other. These fan bases hate each other. There's so much going on here.
So this is the same push-pull of environment, hatred, all that stuff.
Yes.
But if we took the logos off the helmets and we just discussed who we think's a better football team, we can agree that Texas is 6 points better than A&M this year, right? Like, are we on the same page there?
I think that's fair.
So how much do you think that the environment and the animosity and the layoff and everything else that's at stake, all that stuff plays into it?
I think it's more of a styles make fights thing. I think if Texas A&M's not so good at rushing the passer, I feel very comfortable with Texas in this game, despite the environment.
Yeah.
The fact that Texas A&M can cause disruption of Quinn Ewers in ways similar to the way Georgia did, that is what gives me pause. Otherwise, I'd feel very, very comfortable with Texas.
Yeah. So part of me wants to be like, the environment's not going to be, but you can't spend all year talking about this game and then finally getting an opportunity to go and how insane the environment's going to be, and then like not take that into account when it comes into the game. I think Texas is 6 points better. I think that the environment, the 12th man, the situation, all of it is going to come into play. I'm going to take the points at home.
Yeah, and let's not forget that Quinn Ewers has an ankle injury.
Well, what I was going to say is I'm going to give you a bonus prediction for this.
Oh boy, here we go.
Arch Manning plays in it at some point.
I don't think that's a very hot take, because
you don't.
Because if Quinn Ewers has a bum ankle, if there's a wrong step, even if you've got to go get retaped, there's a good chance you see Arch Manning at some point. Or if Quinn Ewers can't move against that pass rush, you may have to put Arch Manning in.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, how much does that change things? Quinn Ewers and Arch Manning both look bad against Georgia. So I'm not looking at that little period of Arch Manning against Georgia as, oh, Arch will come in and poop all over himself in this game. I don't think that's necessarily true. I think if you had to put Arch in because Quinn is hurt and it's just Arch's game at that point, I think he settles. Also, we don't know how the 1 reps are going to get split up this week.
No.
With a limited Quinn Ewers.
I feel like we learned absolutely less than zero about Arch Manning in that Georgia game. Like you and I are.
Yeah, I don't think like we should be judging him based on that.
He had like 8 snaps. What are we doing? I think he is going to play in this game because he is needed for some reason, whether it be injury relief or a change of pace or something.
And how much of the legend would that, like, both ways? Arch comes in A&M and is the reason they lose to A&M, or Arch comes in and is the reason they beat A&M?
I'm excited to get down there, though. I really am. Yeah, it's going to be great. I'm going to take the points here. I think Texas is a better football team, but I respect what the situation is showing, and I don't think that like A&M could be possibly more jacked up or playing harder than they would in this game.
Ari, I'm going to take Texas to cover here.
Okay.
I think the Longhorns are tired of hearing us say they didn't play anybody, that they actually aren't very good. I think they may come out and prove they are pretty good. Because what's the thing Texas has been consistent at also? Their defense has been consistently good.
Yeah. And they have done a pretty good job, save for a few games in the last month, of beating up on the teams that they're better than.
Yeah. So I'll take Texas to cover here. And a Texas-Georgia rematch in the SEC championship game, which I think could be very interesting.
Yeah.
But obviously, if I'm wrong here and A&M wins this game, the scene in Kyle Field will be...
just do our podcast on the field after the game, I guess. I don't know. We'll have to figure it out.
Yes, we will. It's just... I want... Just like we did when we were at Ole Miss, Georgia, I want people coming up to us, just interrupting. Let's have it.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I'm looking forward to it, Andy. Just get your ass out here and let's get ready for the weekend.
Guys, I can't imagine a more fun rivalry weekend. As you see in this pick show, there's so many games that we don't know. Like, weirdness could take over.
Mm-hmm.
This is going to be so much fun. This week is going to be so much fun. Ari and I are playing blind resumes tomorrow. We got Saucy Takes Wednesday. We're arguing Thanksgiving sides on Thursday. 9:30 a.m. Eastern time. Get your asses here. We're going to have some fun. We'll talk to you tomorrow.